I know, it's taken us a while to do this one. Page 157. Yeah, the peacemaker who went to war. Even as porter, Nuno could not give them all the time he wished. Prayer, convent duties, visit from royal persons who were not to be insulted simply because he had himself repudiated titular nobility, all took much of his time, but all the rest was given to the poor, and the poor in turn crowded about the lodge, clamoring for Brother Nuno. The hungry asked for food, the sick begged to have his blessing. Those poverty-stricken, those trembling with fever, those who repelled others by their revolting wounds and leprosy, were all welcomed by him with such warmth that, though they sometimes could receive no more than his smile, were all refreshed. Soon he had a new fame. When he went down into Lisbon on errands, or with permission, to visit some particular shrine or sick person, swarms of the poor soon gathered. Traffic stopped as they clamored about him down the streets. He would be dressed in his tattered habit, a mean cap on his head, carrying a rosary in one hand, bent by age, leaning on a cane. A sign of the cross. Brother Nuno, some cried. Just a sign of the cross, they said, or the touching of his hand, or even of his clothing, was enough to cure them. For all, Brother Nuno had a kind word, an affectionate caress. He felt himself happy among them, happier than he had ever felt in palaces, in royal estates, or even when surrounded by exultant troops in the flush of a victory. During these few years that followed, all too rapidly one upon the other, Nuno's wonderful soul gave forth its most brilliant flashes of virtue. It stood revealed in all the glory of his profound humility and inexhaustible charity. How, for his choice of her, his lady in heaven had enriched him. Before long, all Portugal was singing Nuno's praise. He had first set them an example of courage to win freedom, and he now set them an example for the proper use of freedom. And his example was followed perhaps in no other court of Europe. Were morals so exemplary, nor in any other country was there a greater sense of national unity and brotherly love. A nation was being born not so much in labor of war, but in labor of new ideas, of militant Catholicism. Could it be that we may see a renewal of this today? Chapter 12. Behold, thy mother. Nuno was ill. He had been in Carmel 8, wonderful. Carmel 8, E-I-G-H-T, like the number. Well, it had an exclamation point, so that's why I said it loudly. Behold, thy mother. Nuno was ill. He had been in Carmel 8, wonderful. Happy years. Oh, okay. He had been in Carmel 8 wonderful, happy years. He had found the pearl without price, the boundless treasure that could never be taken from him. He lived now, not none Alvarez Pieria, but with Mary and God. Brother Nuno of Mary knew that he would not be restrained to this earth much longer. He knew that his lady was waiting for him, for the final nuptials in the heart of Christ. I will rejoice, he could say with the psalmist, in the things that were said to me. We shall go into the house of the Lord. Don Duarte was there every day to see him, bringing the physician from the royal palace, long before the celebrated physician whom Don Duarte had brought on visits to Nuno under the subterfuge of merely having him along as a friend. Counseled Don Duarte that the aged brother should get more sleep, should not spend himself so much. But Brother Nuno would not listen. Why should he prolong life by wasting it? Yes, it's the old, why should I make my bed if I'm just going to mess it up anyways? But But now, in his most miserably poor cell, Portugal's great hero lay upon the pallet, unable to rise. Don Duarte passed many weary hours there at his side, praying, hoping he might be of some service. Neither Bee, nor indeed Nuno himself, knew how great had been the bond of love between them, nor was it just between them, it was between Nuno and all Portugal, from the poorest peasant to the king. It's a Celsius mixed with some of the Waterboy hydration. It's really good. It tastes like an old school popsicle. Alright, let's see. From the peasant to the king. When it was certain that the illness would not pass unless a miracle might happen, thousands of people crowded to the monastery. Devotions were attended all over the country, praying God that the Grand Constable might be spared yet a little while. Almost daily the king himself, despite all the urgencies of state, was there in the cell with Don Duarte, watching, hoping. On the 13th day of October, 1431, King John was not at Nuno's side. He had to attend what was perhaps the most solemn and important congress in the history of Portugal, the congress at which the final peace pact was signed between Castile and Portugal, the pact in which Castile renounced all rights to Portugal and fully recognized their sovereignty. Portugal, from that day, ceased to fear invasion from Castile. From that day, Castile became her friend. On the next day, the Feast of All Saints, November 1st, Brother Nuno became suddenly worse. It was as though his mission had been completed. The people of Portugal had been praying for his recovery, and rather than answer their prayer in a manner that would deprive Brother Nuno any longer of the beatific vision, God answered it by bringing about the final pact with Castile. That very evening, the day the pact was signed, Nuno could more than ever join in the chant of the Nunc Dimittis, which came to him faintly from the great chapel he had erected to his laity. Now dost thou dismiss thy servant, O Lord, according to thy word, in peace. Nunc Dimittis is Nuncdimittis. I believe it's Latin. Thus came the dawn of November 1st, 1431, the day that Nuno was to leave his beloved Portugal for the nation of saints. During the day, all Lisbon heard the pealing of bells. The pealing, P-E-A-L-I-N-G. The pealing of bells, celebrating the peace that had been signed and sealed by the kings of Portugal and Castile, and celebrating their solemnity of all saints. The entire church, triumphant. They rang out, too, the joy that was in Brother Nuno's heart. He had already received the last sacraments. First, he had renewed his religious vows to Father Alphonse, who had come from Moira to be present. He had thanked the Superior and all his brother religious for having taken him into the order. Many of the assembled friars had to stifle sobs as Nuno asked them to forgive him if he had at any time offended anyone. Some broke into open sobs when the saintly brother devoutly followed the holy rite of extreme unction and seemed actually to embrace our Lord in the last communion. The physician saw that the last moments were at hand. King John, who had asked that he be notified, came post haste from the palace. When he entered the little cell, he saw the mask of death on Nuno's face. The monarch rushed across the room, bent down over the pallet, and embraced the emaciated body. Nuno made a feeble effort as though he wished to return the embrace. When the king straightened himself and turned, the onlookers say that such extreme agony was written on his tearful face and betrayed by his heaving breast, that it seemed rather that he was in the agony of death than the dying saint. King John must have been filled with the memory of his many wonderful hours with Nuno, tender hours in the family, glorious hours on the field of battle in the triumphant marches. He must have remembered that day when Nuno, hardly more than a boy, had upset the banquet table when Beatrice was betrothed to the King of Castile, and he himself was sitting hopelessly at the same table. He must have remembered the Revolution, and how Nuno stood up to the Congress in his determination to conduct the war as he saw fit, and how the men followed him against such unbelievable odds, and how Nuno led them to free the country they both loved so well, and how little Nuno had thought of himself, all that had been given to him, all those lands distributed to tenants, all that money to the poor, all the shrines built, all the victorious crusades against sin. Not only had Nuno risked his own life and disdained all earthly fortune, but he had preferred duty even to his family, seeing 3 of his brothers go down to death. Meanwhile, Nuno was forgetting all that is human and earthly. His wide and luminous eyes, staring from a death-like mask, seemed to be looking into heaven. He was dressed in the habit in which he was to be buried. He had asked that favor. He did not want death camouflaged. He wanted to embrace it. Rather than a death shroud, it was a birth garment. In his tapering, emaciated hands, he held a crucifix pressed against his breast. Many times he painfully raised it to his lips in a feeble effort to kiss our Lord's wounds. To the slow melancholy tolling of the convent bell made known to Lisbon that Brother Nuno was dying. It was heard through the pealings of all the other bells throughout the city, and the people understood. Everywhere, men and women and children were upon their knees, in home or in the churches, praying. Some had never prayed quite that way in all their lives. Brother Nuno seemed like a part of them. Under the great Gothic arches of the Carmel Basilia, erected by Nuno to the Virgin, who promised a happy death to scapular wearers, ladies and knights and common people gathered to pray. Back in the humble cell, breathing became even more difficult and troubled for him. In a weak but surprisingly steady voice, he made his last request. He wanted someone to read the Passion of our Lord from the Gospel of St. John. The prior immediately gave a sign for one of the religious to approach the pallet and to read. In the silence, accentuated by stifled sobs, the pages of the manuscript Bible cracked loudly as the reader sought the passage. Nuno listened with deep recollection. He did not seem to be there. As the drama of Christ's Passion slowly and familiarly unfolded in the simple words of the beloved apostle, Nuno's face seemed to register all of its feeling, as though he were seeing our Lord approach death, carrying the cross, nailed to it, raised, dying. Suddenly, the reading friar came to the words, Esse or Ecce, Esse mater tua, which means, behold thy mother. He read no further. All these words, Brother Nuno suddenly relaxed. The physician, anxious, bent over him. He was dead. She had come for him, his lady. God had come to the world through her, and Nuno, through her, had gone to God. Behold thy mother. High in the great belfry, the bells of Our Lady of Victory told the tidings to a tearful Lisbon. From one minute to another, the people had been waiting for that sound. Now that it came, they could hardly believe it. The mournful tones passed through the evening air, and all other bells felt silent. It rolled under the beautiful azure heaven of Nuno's Portugal, passing above the orange trees and palms, and falling like hammer blows on the hearts of thousands. It bespoke a general misfortune, a national sorrow. The poor wept for their benefactor and consoler. The great mourned their companion in arms, the hero of their now independent fatherland. The king grieved for his friend and brother. Lamentation rose on every side. From everywhere, crowds began to throng up the mountain for a last look at the remains of their beloved. You're welcome. Thank you. Cheers. It's a really nice day. It is 12:24 here in the afternoon. Yeah, I guess it's about time to take down the Easter eggs.